do. Bling, 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 bling. Here they come. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Nice. Fast fire. Nice.
Only Ed Beal has the courage to turn on his camera. I love that, and I dig that about you, Ed. I dig
He's
that.
so studly, he just wants to show it off.
Listen, you know what? Beat your chest to that one. I love it.
Which one's messier than mine? No one.
All right.
Yeah, there we go.
There they go. Everybody's getting the courage now, Chris. See? Karen's always hanging in her library.
If I can be in my white T-shirt and baseball caps and glasses, we can see everybody.
John's even got an official Brinks logo up there. Look at him. He's so fancy.
Karen always looks official, like she's in some royal library.
Yeah, she's reading something. She's
yes,
always
very like studious. There you go. Asimov's biographical encyclopedia. Perfect. I would expect nothing less from you, Karen.
Little light rating.
Right.
That's it.
Isaac's so casual.
All right, so our numbers are back to closing in on where we're used to being. I was a little nervous about the last go round. All right, when are we starting this shindig?
Now, floor's yours.
Oh, we're on?
Yeah.
We're up. Usually you tell me when we're operational. So welcome to everyone, including Megan's note taker. I'm seeing that right now. Megan at Fletcher Arms is so important. She has a note taker, an AI note taker, taking notes of this session. So welcome to everyone, including Megan's note taker. It is Monday, May 19th, and this is our periodic, monthly, sometimes every 6 weeks call of the FFLGuard Cognizente. With me today, I have, of course, Brother Brian down in Florida. I see his dutiful companion, colleague, Ms. Avis Lindler from South Carolina is joining us, although she was having video problems, but I'm glad you're back and not sick, Avis. I see Bouchard, who we've dragged off the golf course for 45 minutes to lend us some of his insight. He's down in Virginia there. I see Delaware man, Mr. Franzi, Michael Franzak. Nice to have you with us, Director of Compliance. Of course, the stunning and fabulous, just looking like $1 million.
Thanks,
Alexis,
Chris.
No, not you. Not you. Alexis, Hank, take it easy. Alexis, always looking dressed up. I look completely dressed down. You're completely dressed up. That's why we need you around to make us all look good. It's nice to have you from Texas. And Hank, didn't mean to throw you under the bus, but you can't hold a candle to Alexis. But we are happy to have you from Kentucky. It's been an eventful few weeks since we last met. We've got a new director of the ATF, who is also the Army Secretary. We have a new Deputy Director, Rob Sakata, who is a good asset and a good guy to have there. He actually knows what he's doing. There's been a purge over at ATF of some dead wood. There's also been a departure of some good wood because they were given the chance to leave and they did. And I have a feeling that in the next few months, and I'll I won't steal anybody else's thunder, but I have a feeling in the next few months you're going to see a lot less wood at ATF, including less inspectors, because I just don't think the budget can hold out for them to pay a lot of folks over there. So we shall see on that one. But to that end, we have still been busy. We have had no attrition. We have had plenty of inspections opening up because while the administrative action order, which is the document that governs how inspections are done, and when they go to an administrative action, that's the document within ATF. Once they said no more Biden deadly sins triggering immediate revocation proceedings, they had to basically put everything on hold as to who was going to a hearing, but they kept doing the inspections because what else are the inspectors going to do? So we've had inspection after inspection opening. And I, again, urge everyone, if you're getting inspected, you have to call and let us know so we can try and control it in the trenches. That's the best place to try and control an inspection, but they are still happening. They are still coming fast and furious, no pun intended. And they're something that you have to be alerted to. So it's not like Trump's here, daddy's home, we're all good. That's certainly not the case. And in this crazy state of flux as to what's happening over there, we have to stay on our toes. I know summer's coming. I know that's downtime for many of us, but it should be an uptime to do your inventories. And I have a sneaking suspicion that as time moves forward, doing an inventory is going to be more important than you think. So make a note, May 19th, Chris said, someday we may be asked if we're doing inventories, and that may actually help us. I have a funny feeling it will. So that was my pre-planned intro that I formulated in my simple mind. I will turn it over to Mr. Franzak first, who always has his bullet points ready to enlighten us. What do you got for us, Mike?
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to enhance from your conversation regarding the ATF's firearms administrative action policy and procedures. The new one that we have out now, it doesn't get rid of the deadly sins, but it just doesn't enforce those deadly sins as the Biden administration had ATF doing. Those deadly sins were, before the Biden administration, they were always in there, but you never would get revoked if you just had one instance for, if you didn't do a post 30-day NICS check.
So it didn't. So what Biden? So we're clear, Mike, and this is a little dialogue between me and you. What Biden did was highlight those 4 or 5 things that were already in there. Okay, you're getting into trouble if you don't do those things. But what they said when Biden came into office was, if you do touch one of those 4 or 5 nerves, we're going right to revocation. So now by retracting what we call the Biden deadly sins, it's kind of a misnomer because those sins are still in there. You still can't do it, but it just doesn't hit the tripwire of necessarily sending. It could, but it's not automatic. Right. Fair enough?
Correct. That's correct, because they were there. They just were enhanced by the Biden administration for just one, as we know, some of our clients had one instance, one violation for an entire inspection. And that one violation put them in that revocation category. It's not going to be the case anymore, not under this administration, at least. And so every inspection is going to be taken by itself, and it's going to be looked at by itself. You're not going to be, it all depends on, and we've covered a lot of these things before. It all depends too on your cooperation with the ATF IOIs who come out. It all depends on, like Chris said, doing those inventories are, as he said, extremely important, quarterly at the minimum. You've got to do the inventory. If you don't do the inventory, it could get you in a lot of trouble, especially if you're missing more than 10 guns. More than 10 guns, Mr. Bouchard can back me on this, usually mean you're going to have an ATF agent visiting your premise for an investigation regarding those missing fires. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, definitely.
So you got to get those inventories done, and you got to get them done correctly. So with that said, I've talked with a few ATF people in the last month or so. And because we've been noticing a little change in their inspections, we've noticed them being kinder, gentler, and they are really trying to emphasize the training aspect of it, the educational piece of it with FFLs, where in the past, under Biden administration, that was not being done. It was always, I got you now. I got one of the deadly sins. I got you. We're going to go forward with that. Now it's, reel them back. Let's help the FFL out. Let's have them understand what they're doing wrong, help them correct it. So the key now, too, as we're noticing, is any violations that are found during the inspection, and the IOI should be bringing that to your attention during the inspection, is to get those violations corrected as soon as possible. If you can get them corrected during that inspection before the closing conference, it shows ATS your ability to correct those violations immediately, and it shows them, as I'll talk about some of the things that they talk, as it's in the adverse action order, it shows them that your willingness to achieve compliance with the Gun Control Act. You acknowledge, hey, I messed up. This is not it wasn't on purpose. It was not, as Chris loved the term, willful. It was not willful at all. It was just in human error. And that happens, especially a lot of times human errors happen when you're going from paper to electronic. We see that too. Whereas some of your paper open entries may not get pulled over to the electronic records, and there's a little bit of disparity there in between those documents. And so that happens. But now the good thing is a lot of those electronic 4473s, if you keep them in the cloud, they're there. You're never going to lose them. So you don't have to keep searching through paper records constantly. So that helps ATF out too, which is part of their policy going forward. It's not required, but it helps that you go electronic. It helps that you do inventories, not required, and it helps that you have security, not required. That shows that you're willing to go to that compliance effort, and you understand your responsibilities and put that put forth that effort a little bit more to ensure that your store is in compliance with the Gun Control Act. So with that, we've got some things, like I said, ATF told me that they're taking one inspection at a time. But I did notice that they're focusing on getting those violations corrected. And they're also focusing on, I noticed this early, is any of the non-immigrant alien sales. So if you sell if you're on the border and you sell a lot of firearms to non-immigrant aliens, ATF, you might be seeing this already, ATF's looking at those very closely, especially the ones that get denied, especially those individuals that get denied. They are being referred right away to law enforcement. And law enforcement is going out, they're passing that information over to ICE, and who knows what's going to happen to those people. They could be deported right away. So keep that in mind. That's why they're looking closely at those. And looking at any non-immigrant aliens also who are purchasing a large amount of firearms. So that is definitely going on. That's one thing. And they're looking at denials. Who's getting denied? That's the same thing they were doing under Biden, but they may be going back multiple years now, not just 1 year. They may be going back 5, 6, 7 years, looking at those denials to see if there's anybody's purchasing, had somebody else coming in. As you all probably realize, some of those characteristics, the same address, same last name, so same firearm has been denied 2 days earlier. Somebody's purchasing that same firearm. So keep that in mind also. They're looking closely at denials, non-immigrant aliens, looking for those suspicious transactions that occur. So that is a lot of more emphasis under the Trump administration looking at that, especially the non-immigrant aliens. But they're also, like I said, going forward with their educating the FFLs. But one thing you got to keep in mind too is there's a few things in the adverse action where they were in here before, but I like to emphasize these because it's really important as an FFL that you understand these 5 things. One is, any violation you have comes in, and we emphasize these at all kind of hearings. And I always pass Chris notes at hearings. Emphasize this, emphasize this. Okay. Will your operations pose a threat to public safety or contribute to violent crime or other criminal activities? That's one thing ATF looks at when they're looking to revoke somebody. You know, are your transactions posing a threat to public safety in any way or violent crime? So if you knowingly conduct straw sales, that's where that would come into play. Did the FFL self-report any violations prior to the inspection? Now, we have some people who do that. They have some significant violations that they realize, oh, I didn't do a background check on this. And you have a firearm, for instance, you have the rifle with the integrated suppressor, right? And you failed to do the background check on the rifle because ATF did the background check on the suppressor via NFA. So that both go out. So now you realize you didn't do the background check. So you bring that person back in to conduct that background check. That's probably a good thing to self-report before ATF comes back and says, hey, you failed to do this background check on the rifle. I know it doesn't make sense. You just had an NFA transaction done. The background check was made. I don't disagree with you, but that's the way the regulation is. You have to have that background check, next check done on that person for the rifle also, in addition to the one that was done for the NFA for the suppressor. So that's where you would self-report. Is the FFL taking responsibility for your violations? So that goes in what I just said. Any violations uncovered, say you didn't do multiple sales, and the IOI sees that you didn't do 30 multiple sales in the past year. And he said, you need to get these done now as soon as possible. Get them done right away so that he can say on your report of violations that it was done. That's what that means. You're taking that responsibility, getting those violations corrected immediately. And here's another one. Has the FFL demonstrated a willingness and ability to achieve and maintain compliance? So that just shows, you're making changes throughout. Hey, weren't doing inventories. Now you are. You're doing them quarterly. So, or maybe monthly. So that just shows your willingness to, hey, I realized I had a problem and now I resolve it. I'm doing more frequent inventories so I won't be caught not putting firearms into my A&D book or logging them out when a sale occurs. So that's just a few of those. I didn't want to go over every single one of them, but that comes into play now when ATF's doing your inspections. Even if you may fall into a warning conference category, they can now bring that down to a warning letter. So if they feel like your FFL your inspection just put a few things, maybe you're missing, maybe you had to report 7, 8 guns missing. They feel you have a good handle on it, but it was just some kind of an issue going on at the time. They can't pinpoint what it was, but they maybe believe that a warning conference is not necessary. They can put that down to a warning letter, but that has to go through multiple forms of review before that can happen. And the last thing I have is during the adverse action policy. We didn't see a lot of this before, but now we may, where ATF can send you a letter. I think we touched on this on one call, Chris, but ATF will send you a letter. They're contemplating possibly revoking your license, but they're giving you the opportunity to tell the DIO why your license should not be revoked or what actions you have taken to rectify the issue at hand, those issues that they're thinking about possibly revoking your license. So that's an opportunity where you would submit your documentation in a letter form back to ATF, and that's when you would definitely need to get us involved with you in responding properly to ATF. So, and in the order, they give an example of a letter that comes out, and we could probably even we can even put that into one of our newsletters in case that comes out from ATF, our Friday e-blast that shows you this is the kind of letter. Some of you might have gotten this already. It's the kind of letter that you will receive from ATF if they're allowing you to write back to them to explain why your FFL should not be revoked. And that just means that I don't think it's They don't want to revoke your license if you get this letter. They just want you to give them documentation to justify why you shouldn't be revoked. They don't really want to go to a hearing. They just want that justification that you can provide and we can help you with to say, this is why I should not be revoked. Because if they really wanted to revoke your license, you would not have received that letter. They probably would have went right straight to a notice of revocation. So
yeah, I think
that's
they
a good
called that
sign. They're trying to work with you.
An off ramp or something like that. Weren't they calling that the
That's what it is. Yes. Yep.
the revocation off ramp? And what I think is important to note, and we do have a copy of that. We can just black out, the names to protect the innocent and post it. But I think what you have to remember is they are being good, quote, they're being lawyerly. They're padding the record, right? So if they get you to put in writing, hey, I'm never going to do this again, and you do it again, that's pretty willful, or at least under the Gun Control Act, it's willful. So you have to be careful. This, again, we can't let our guard down that, well, Biden's gone, everything's great now. No, there's still anti-gun forces out there. There's still folks who want to see, FFLs out of business, or at least less FFLs. So remaining vigilant is very important.
And one
Mike,
thing too, we just noticed, Chris, I wanted to real quickly go over with everybody.
Yeah.
If you have an IOI who comes to your premise and then leaves, gets their inspection done, whatever, and constantly is emailing you, hey, I need you to send me these documents. I need you to send me these documents, or this or that. Time out there. They can come to your business premise. That's what their job is. Their job is in the field, which means in your store. It's not sitting behind a desk emailing you to send you documents.
Right. You have to make yourself available. You have to open the doors for them. That's the law, not battle of the emails.
Right. So we've been seeing some of that up in the Northeast area, that is right now. But don't do that. That's their job, is to come into the office, to come in there and go over those violations with you, explain what they're finding, so you can explain back to them, this is why it happened. Oh, I got that document. This is not, you never asked me about that before. I have all these multiple sales. Here's my documentation. I sent it to ATF right here on these dates. So things like that, they should be in the field sitting down with you, going over that, which is what they're shooting for, which is what they really want to do now. And said, I got you. So.
And Mike, that's no different than them taking pictures and saying, oh, I need to download this on the thumb drive to take it with me so I can do it at home. We're here to cooperate. We're here to help. But that's not part of the law. The law is I need to have my doors open for you to do your inspection. So you don't need to take anything out of here. You don't need a constant barrage of emails. You need to come here. And, of course, that poses logistical challenges for them. It does. But at the same time, it's sort of important that we know that, right? Because that's you voluntarily assisting them when you don't have to do that. You don't even have to provide folks to help them do inventory. You could make the one or two IOIs that show up there do the whole inventory by themselves. But how does that help you? I mean, we want to get them in and out of there fast. I get it. But these are things that we need to know, which is why we always want to be informed during the inspection. So later on, we could say, yeah, but we let you do this. We did that. We didn't have to do this. We did this. How are we willfully violating the law if we're willfully assisting you with your inspection? All important to note. I'm going to pivot to the next Mike Bouchard, next Mike over. And Mike, I'm assuming that in here, you're going to talk about the new industry liaison to ATF. If not, then you should, or I can. But that's definitely should be a bullet point for you as our ATF liaison, the new industry liaison from ATF.
Good morning, everybody. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend ATF's memorial service. They do it every year during Police Week, and they read off the 194 names of the agents who have been killed in the line of duty throughout ATF's history. The Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and of course, the acting director all attended. I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of the executive staff while I was there. Just Friday, the administration announced they're moving forward with merging ATF and DEA. It's an ambitious agenda. They hope to have it done by October, which that's not possible to even do. The whole thing needs congressional approval because since the mid-90s, ATF's appropriation language has a rider on it specifically says that no funds can be used to merge ATF with any other agency. So they'll have to get that approved through Congress before they start making any drastic steps. A lot of people are taking early outs with ATF. They have another round that's pending. And this deal was that if you put your name in by a certain date, I think it was by the beginning of May, you still have the opportunity to pull your name off. I think the final decision is going to be at the end of May. So now that the DOJ announced they're going to merge ATF and DEA, I think a lot of the people will take the early outs and just go, because unless you're directly involved in a lot of the law enforcement things, I'm not sure how many other people are going to be able to keep their jobs. So that's just my thoughts, but I think you're going to see a lot of experienced people leaving here very shortly, which is going to be a problem for everybody trying to get you answers when you have questions, getting determinations on things when you're a manufacturer. So it's going to be cutting everybody's service. In addition, their budget's proposed to be cut by at least 25% again by Congress. So they're dealing with those kind of things. They're hopeful that they can get some of that restored and not get Congress to go that far, but they're certainly working on it. So everything's kind of in a holding pattern there. No big decisions. People don't know if they're staying, if they're going, what their new duties would be with a merger. So it's tough times, and the morale there is pretty low. But they're still out there. I think they've done opened up over 10,000 cases already this year, and they're consistent with the numbers that they're producing for violent crime, putting criminals in jail. So everybody's still working hard. As Chris mentioned, they designated a designated industry rep, Chrissy Carlson. She's the DIO out of Dallas, but she's going to have a dual role to be the industry rep. I have an appointment to discuss her role this Friday, so I'll kind of get a little bit more detail about how she's going to interact. We did lose Mariana Mitchum, who was the senior industry ops person in field operations. She was excellent to deal with. She was a real problem solver for us. She took the early out and has left ATF as of last Friday. So the downside of this whole thing is the experienced people are going to leave. We're going to get new people in there, and we're going to have to educate them about what's happened in the past, and help them through looking at what safeguards they can have and not go down some rabbit holes that other people have done in the past that got people upset. So pending any questions, that's all I've got.
Do we know where Mariana went?
No, nobody's really saying.
All I know is that she possibly went to a gun control group.
That's also what I was hearing, although none have been named.
Right.
So, that's never a good thing, but it is what it is. Mike, I'm glad that you're making appointments to go see ATF. I wouldn't want you running around there unfettered. I know how that might disturb some.
He does do that a lot.
He does. I know. He's out of control. You could tell just by his demeanor on these calls what a wild man Mike Bouchard is. But okay, inside joke aside, that being said, thanks very much, Mike. Most appreciated. And we're looking forward to hearing on the next call what that visit with Chrissy was like. I will move over to the lovely and talented Ms. Alexis Tennell down in Austin, Texas there, or nearabouts. What you got going on today?
Well, just some little housekeeping and some reminders for everyone. Don't forget, if you get some time away from your business this summer, if you're responsible for trace requests, be sure there's someone else that knows how to handle those and that they are responded to. You only have that 24 hours. be sure they have access to the document, the file cabinets, the systems, whatever it may be, so that you don't drop the ball on that one, because nothing's worse than getting that panic call. If you weren't able to watch the Readying Transition webinar that we hosted about buying or selling an FFL business, that is posted in our library as of today. So thanks, Brian, for getting that up for us. And it's there in its entirety. And shortly, the associated PowerPoint will be there for it too. It's also a great time to take a look at your users on your account with FFLGuard, who should have access to your tickets, who shouldn't, if employees have left, be sure you let us know so that we can be sure their access is disabled if they did have it. So definitely take a look at that. A couple of just other things. If you are trying to get your bound book out of your software system, it says that you're required to have this daily downloaded unencrypted file, et cetera, et cetera. That's a CSV file is what all the systems output. If you are opening that, don't just double click to open the file, because you'll lose the preceding zeros, whether it's a zip code, a serial number, etc. And when you just double click it to open it. So definitely know how that works, because otherwise it can cause a hitch. Great other systems out there just have buttons you push and it handles it, right? That's okay. Again, just be sure that if it's that CSV file and you're just double clicking to open, you don't lose your leading zeros. Typically what you would want to do would be open whatever spreadsheet program you're going to use for that and import the data so that you can not lose those zeros. Another reminder, 4473s need to be closed out even if a transfer does not occur. So what that means is with the current 4473, you have got to complete question 34 and 35 in section E. Obviously, it wasn't transferred. There's no date of disposition, but you still got to close out that form and you still have to maintain it. ATF has said that once any information is inputted into section B, the form must be maintained forever. But those forms where a disposition does not occur have to be filed separately from those where a disposition does occur, right? And your filing is regulated. Alphabetical, chronological, or by transaction number. You can get a violation for just having stacks of 4473 sitting around. Off of what Mike said, if you're looking for information, want to be sure your non-immigrant processes are up to par, we have infographic, we have all sorts of information around that in our library. So definitely you can download that, have that available if you need it. And one last reminder, again, those self-reporting, self-audits, being able to prove up you're keeping yourself in check are hugely important. We have one available to you online anytime. Don't be shy, use that. It will give you a great idea of where your compliance is at, maybe some things you need to button up. And like I said, if you continue to do that routinely, you'll be able to have documentation that this is something you're aware of, you're working on, and you're identifying those things. Most importantly, though, make changes. Don't just identify the same thing over and over again. If you're not sure how to fix it, call us. That's what we're here for. So that's all I have.
So it's important to know that those self-inspections, I believe, are going to become very relevant in the next 6 months to a year. I want you to know that. I do believe that as there are cuts made at ATF, as there's merger talk, which, not for nothing, I'll believe it when I see it. It's more likely that the budget gets cut than ATF gets merged with someone else. So the important part here is the self-inspections, I believe, are very important because I think they may start looking at them someday, and that's only going to help you. That's number one. Number two is both Alexis and Franzak talked about non-immigrant alien transactions. And it's important to remember that that's the only time we're attaching anything to a Form 4473. In fact, you have to by law. So the hunting license and everything else that would go with it get attached. We don't normally attach driver's licenses. We don't normally attach anything else. They go in a side buddy business file for our own eyes. And if we want to share that with ATF. But otherwise, all the non-immigrant alien stuff, that gets attached. Very important. Oh, people always forget that. So those are the
Hey,
two
Chris.
things I want. Yep.
One thing to want to touch base on that we saw over the weekend, and now update is the big beautiful bill with that they're working on is Congressman Clyde down in Georgia was holding out his yes vote because he wanted suppressors to be taken out of NFA. And that update as of this morning, Chris, was that they want to eliminate the $200 part of that. So the question is, does that mean that if they eliminate the $200, does the registration still take place? That's the big question right now.
And I think that the registration is just being unspoken about. And I think that happens as a matter of course, but to be politically expedient, I don't think talking about not registering suppressors would do anything but create a shitstorm. So they're probably just talking about keeping it simple, making it so you don't have to pay $200 for a suppressor, which people have been talking about forever. The Hearing Protection Act has been out there forever. It's been on the table, but yes, that's what Andrew was holding out for. And yeah, I guess as of this morning, he snuck that back in. We'll see how far it gets. The last thing I wanted to say before I went over to Brian, although Brian, I'm going to let you handle this. I've been reading the chats on the side, and Nicole says, hey, wait, IOIs aren't supposed to be taking a copy of your bound book with them. And my very succinct answer was, nope. Brian elaborated on that a little bit, and you can talk about that a little bit more, Brian, but that was definitely an interesting note in the chat.
Yeah, it gets difficult because they do. So a lot of times they will request a copy of your electronic bound book on a jump drive so that they can sort and work a little bit easier. And then how are you supposed to control whether or not they're taking that jump drive off the premises, right? ATF should not be taking any of your records off premises, be it paper or electronic. And at the end of your inspection, if they did request it on a thumb drive, you should be requesting that they destroy your records that are on that thumb drive. So, I mean, Mike, what would you really suggest? I mean, we do get it a lot that the IOIs are requesting to have the bound book on a thumb drive, but how do you suggest you really control that situation?
Well, I always, if they had to, like you said, is get that thumb drive back, and that my documentation is on there, or like you said, have them destroy that information before they leave. It does help them with the inspection and go faster, or it helps you from printing out everything if you can just download it there. But or if you have a designated laptop there at the store, they can work right from that based on how many IOIs they have. You don't have to download anything at all then. So, but yeah, I would get the thumb drive back if that's what people have been doing. Or like Brian said, ask to, hey, you downloaded this. I want to ensure that this is not being taken off premise and you're not storing this at all, because you got a lot of, as everybody is aware, a lot of information that's personal information that they have now downloaded onto their computer or thumb drive from your firearms purchasers in your stores. So I agree with you. I would probably get that, delete it if you can prior to them leaving. And if they want to print something out and take it, they're requesting that, always ask them to provide you with a document receipt. This is what, on this date, this is what they're taking off premise. And they're supposed to provide that back to you. Again, all that documentation back, and with another receipt that they returned it. So anytime they're taking stuff off premise, they should provide you with a document receipt of what they took off premise.
And tying more into inspections and piggybacking on what we started talking about, there are a lot of inspections going on. We've had, I would say, at least 20 since the beginning of the year, just amongst our clients. And we are just getting a whirlwind of information from everyone, where not every inspection is being conducted the same or the way it should be. Even with the same IOI, we had an instance with an IOI up in the Northeast
Sure did.
who was taking information off site, trying to do everything via email, barely showing up. The inspection dragged out for weeks and weeks and weeks. As a matter of fact, they still haven't had their closing conference. But in the interim, that IOI went to another inspection last week and finished with those guys in 3 days. He was on site every day. Everything went smoothly. And these clients out in Massachusetts, or as I like to call them, my favorite massholes, he was gone within 3 days, and they had a perfect inspection. They also had a perfect inspection because they stay on top of their inventory and they review their paperwork daily. So that's something that you need to continue to do. It's the summertime. It's the slow time of the year normally for everyone, unless you have fishing and camping in your portfolio, which seems to be, pulling and keeping the stores moving these times of year. I've been trying to reach out to as many clients as I can. I'm actually in a streak where 3 straight weeks I'm at home on my own couch working, calling clients. I've made at least 75 to 100 calls this month, and I can tell you folks real life numbers from all my visits and calls this year. I would say 80% of our clients and other people within the industry that I talk to, 80% of them are down, about 10 to 15%. I'm sure it's something that Hank would touch on as well when he's talking. And then you've got 10% that are maintaining, and another 10% that are, just a little over where they were last year. So if you didn't get a chance to watch our webinar from last Wednesday, the Ready Aim transition, it was excellent. I know it was a little long, but if you are looking to sell or expand, it is an excellent webinar to watch. There was a ton of information provided by Terry in the webinar. So we will shoot that link out to everybody. And other than that, I just want to remind you to do your inventory. And I don't want to take up too much time because I do want Hank to have a chance. And Hank is another guy who you should be utilizing if you are looking to buy or sell, because Hank can help you with an evaluation on your business and how to come up with those numbers. So with that, good to talk to y'all, and I'll see you next month.
So while we look at Ed Beal's question in the chat, let's turn to our friend in Kentucky, Mr. Hank, and hear what he has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of put a bow on what a lot of you folks have been saying here on the talk today, with it being that slower time of year, no different than auditing your firearm inventory, audit your processes and procedures right now and make sure that there's not holes and that you haven't had turnover and new staff that haven't been trained. This is a great time to do refresher training with everybody and get everyone up to par, make sure you're meeting all of the standards in which you're supposed to be meeting, and look for the holes and say, hey, here's something where we're having these repeated constant problems with our procedures. Do we need to be putting a rubber band or some tape around boxes that have integral suppressors to make sure, and it's flagged that, hey, 2 forms need to be done before this leaves, on a box, or is it time for me to transition our store from paper to electronic because we just can't get past this one repeated problem that we're having over and over and over and over and over again? This is a great time of year to audit your processes, just like your inventory, and straighten those out and get yourself on a trajectory so that should you have an audit, the ATF sees you're being proactive about making things better all the time. So that's all I got to say about that from an operational perspective. But from an industry perspective, and Brian alluded to it, it's a patchwork quilt of market conditions right now across the country. I'm getting calls every day from folks going, Hank, what are you seeing out there? What's going on? You know, my sales are down year over year, and some folks are, you know, kind of on a more of an even keel. But I hear from a lot of folks that are struggling right now. Some states are down in the deep double digits of year over year market conditions. Number one, this is my advocacy. Just like we audit our firearms, just like I said, auditing our processes, audit your whole inventory. I can't tell you how many clients I've been working with in the last 45 days who are carrying inventory levels well in excess of the sales potential of what they're going to do, to the tune of $100, $200, $300,000 of excess inventory that could be going to if you can free that up to go to pay payroll and light bills and getting your inventory refreshed so that it's relevant to what is selling right now. Whereas so many shops just put their inventory position on sort of this level playing field of, you know, just to give us a basic example, if they're carrying an average of $500,000 worth of inventory, they're carrying $500,000 in June, they're carrying $500,000 in September, they're carrying $500,000 in January, and in January, $500,000 might not be enough, and in June, $500,000 is double of what you need. This is a great time to look at what is the right amount of inventory I need to be carrying in my store, free up that cash to do other things with. You know, you've heard me talk in some webinars and in some national situations like a SHOT Show. You know, if you can free up, think about it, free up $150,000 worth of cash out of your inventory and plow it into a high yield checking account and make 4% on it, is better than it sitting around doing nothing for your business. So audit your inventory levels and get them to appropriate levels for your sales potential for the next few months. If that's something that you feel like is a big question mark, like, Hank, I don't know what my appropriate inventory levels are, reach out to me. I can help you guys get to what are those type of numbers. But again, from an industry perspective, we have to do, you know, the right things to keep that cash flow rolling in our business. Because yeah, some areas of the country are down double digits. It is a patchwork quilt. So for those of you that are seeing those, oh my gosh, my business is down 10, 15% year over year. Again, it's my advocacy. I know I said this last time, and I'm going to say it this time for those of you that weren't on last session. I say this because so many retailers see themselves as an island and they only see their numbers and they assume everyone else is doing great and they're doing horrible. It's tough right now. You're not an island. If you're, you know, overall, nationally speaking, we're down about 21% right now. If you look at the country as one giant market. So if you're doing anything better than down 21% year over year, that's like fist bump, go out to your sales team and say, hey, we're doing a great job. We're beating the industry right now. But again, if you want to look at some ways to tweak your business to try and beat the street even better, yeah, feel free to reach out to me and we'll see what we can do with you guys.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hank. And I just want to quickly, before we end, comment that Alexis put the link to the Ready Aim Transition video in the chat on the side here. And also Ed Beal asked a great question, which is if you're called and they ask you, if the licensing center, I'm sorry, if NICS calls you and asks you for things, should you provide it? The answer is, yeah, you want to be cooperative, but the important thing to remember is that you're doing so voluntarily. And every time you do something to aid law enforcement voluntarily, that is a feather in your cap. That is law enforcement cooperation. And we have a pro forma law enforcement cooperation letter to make notes for your file in our library. These are the things that you need to pad your file. So if and when you do get pulled in before ATF for something, you can show all the good stuff that you did as well. So to that end, please, Ed and everyone, take a look at that law enforcement cooperation letter and use it whenever LE asks you for anything that you really don't have to provide, but you do because you're a good corporate citizen and you are, you know, willfully compliant with the rules and regulations you have to follow. To that end, I will turn to Miss Avis and ask, when will we meet again? When shall we meet again?
I say, let's go with June 16th.
Okay. I'm for that. So our next meeting will be June 16th, same bat time. Hopefully you have a wonderful Memorial Day. And by the time we come back around, it'll be just before 4th of July. We'll catch up then. We'll have more to tell you. And in the meanwhile, stay safe and we'll talk in a month or so.